The Myth of Attis and the Great Mother, as preserved by Arnobius of Sicca, The Case Against the Pagans, Book 5. In Timotheus, a man not unknown among theologians, and among others too equally learned, the following story is told concerning the origin of the Great Mother of the Gods, and concerning her sacrifices as dug up out of the obscure books of antiquities, and from the most esoteric mysteries, as he himself writes and implies. In the territory of Phrygia, there is, he says, a rock of an unheard-of desolation throughout, the name of which is Agdestis, so called by the natives of that region. Stones taken from it, as Themis had enjoined by an oracle, were thrown on the earth, empty of mortals, by Deucalion and Pyrrha, and from these, along with the others, this Great Mother, as she is called, was shaped and given divine breath. Her, resting and sleeping on the very crest of the rock, Jupiter craved for himself with incestuous desires. But in spite of his continued efforts, he failed to accomplish what he had proposed to himself, and was defeated. Then the rock conceived, and, with many groans going before, in the 10th month, Agdestis was born, so called from his mother's name. In him there was insuperable strength and uncontrollable ferocity of disposition. A lust mad and furious, and stimulated by both sexes. Violently he plundered, laid waste, wherever his monstrous spirit led him. He cared not for the gods, nor men, nor did he think anything more powerful than himself. He despised earth, heaven, and the stars. When in the councils of the gods, the question was brought up again and again how his insolence could be either tamed or suppressed, Liber, that is Dionysus, the rest holding back, takes the task upon himself. With most potent wine, he fortifies a spring which that fellow knew well, and where he had been wont to slake his burning thirst roused by sport and hunting. On an occasion when he felt the need of it, Agdestis runs hither to drink. He gulps down an immoderate draught into his eager veins. Overcome by this unaccustomed experience, he sinks into a most profound sleep. Liber lurks nearby, in ambush. Over his foot, he casts the end of a noose, woven cunningly of hairs. When the power of the wine had been slept off, he jumps up violently, and straining hard on the knots, he himself, by his own strength, robs himself of that by which he had been a man. There is an immense flow of blood. This is snatched up and swallowed by the earth. Thence, suddenly, is born a pomegranate tree with apples. Nana, the daughter of the king or river Sangarius, gazing in astonishment at the beauty of this fruit, plucks and takes some to her bosom. By this, she becomes pregnant. As if she had been ravished, her father shuts her up and tries to have her die of starvation. With apples and other food, she is supported by the mother of the gods. She labors and is delivered of a child, but Sangarius orders it to be exposed. Somebody finds it and takes it, nourishing it on he-goat's milk. And because Lydia calls people who are handsome thus, or because the Phrygians in their dialect named goats Attagi, it happened that the boy's name, Attis, was thus derived. Him the mother of the gods loved as none other, because he was most superb of countenance. Agdestis loved him also, his doting companion in his adolescence, and who, in the only way remaining, bound him to himself by his improper attentions, taking him through the wooded glades and giving him many gifts of wild beasts. These the boy Attis at first boasted were the fruits of his own toil and labor. Later, under the influence of wine, he admitted that he is loved by Agdestis, and from him receives woodland gifts as rewards. For this reason, it is forbidden for those polluted with wine to enter the sanctuary, because it betrayed his silence. Then the king of Pessinus, Midas, desiring to win the boy away from so disgraceful an association, plans to give him his daughter in marriage, and so that no one of sinister omen might break in upon their marriage joys, he caused the town to be closed. But because the mother of the gods, knowing the youth's fate, and that he would be safe among human beings so long as he was free from a matrimonial alliance, to prevent anything untoward from happening, enters the closed city, having lifted its walls with her head, which began to have towers because of this. As for Agdestis, bursting with anger at having the boy torn from him and brought to have interest in a wife, he inspires all the guests with fury and madness. Terror-stricken, the Phrygians cry out, "Adore! Adore!" The daughter of the concubine of Gallus cuts off her breast in emulation of the self-mutilator. Attis snatches the flute which the one who was goading them to fury was carrying, and being himself full of frenzy and roving about, hurls himself down at last, and under a pine tree, mutilates himself. With the streams of blood, his life flits away. From the blood which flowed, a flower springs up, the violet, and entwines the tree. Thence was derived and arose the custom that even now the sacred pines are veiled and garlanded. The maiden who had been the bride, whom Valerius the Pontifex writes was named Ea, covers the breast of the lifeless one with soft wool, sheds tears with Agdestis, and slays herself. When she dies, her blood is changed into purple violets. The mother of the gods digs under these, from which an almond grows, signifying the bitterness of burial. She then bears away the pine tree under which Attis had robbed himself of his manhood to her cave, and about the trunk of the motionless tree, joining in lamentations with Agdestis, she beats and wounds her breast. Jupiter refuses Agdestis's request that Attis might come back to life, but what is possible by concession of fate, this he grants without objecting. That his body should not decay, that his hair should ever grow, and that the very smallest of his fingers should live and alone react by continued motion. Satisfied with these favors, Agdestis, it is said, consecrated the body in Pessinus, and honored it with annual rites and with a sacred ministry. And for all that, how can you assert that representation not be true when the very rites you continue to practice at each returning anniversary are evidence that you believe it to be true, and consider that it has been verified and found worthy of credence? What, for example, does that pine mean, which you always introduce on appointed days into the sanctuary of the Mother of the Gods? Is it not symbolic of that tree under which the mad and unhappy youth laid hands on himself, and which the parent of the gods consecrated as a solace for her grief? What is the meaning of the fleeces of wool with which you bind and surround the trunk of the tree? Is it not a recollection of the woolens with which Ea covered him who was expiring, and believed that she could procure some warmth for his limbs as they grew cold? What is the meaning of the little branches of the tree decked and girt round with garlands of violets? Do they not signify how the mother adorned the pine with the earliest blossoms, as a memorial and testimony of her sad misfortune? What is the meaning of the Galli with their hair disheveled, beating their breasts with their hands? Do they not commemorate the sorrow with which the tower-bearing mother, together with tearful Agdestis, lamented the boy? What is the meaning of the fasting from bread to which you have given the term castus? Is it not an imitation of the time when, in the poignancy of her grief, the divinity abstained from Ceres' fruit? Or what if we say is not so? Speak out. Tell us yourselves. Those eunuchs and effeminates we see in your midst in the services for that divinity, what is their business there? What their concern? What their charge? And why do they, like mourners, beat their arms and breasts and represent the misfortune of those who experience a woeful lot? What is the meaning of those garlands? Those violets? Those swathings and coverings of soft wool? Why, finally, is the pine itself, a little while before swaying in the thickets, an utterly inert piece of wood, next set up in the quarters of the Mother of the Gods like some present and most august divinity? Well, either this is the cause, the one we have found in your writings and treatises, and it is clear that you do not practice divine rites, but that you are giving a representation of sad events. Or, if there is another reason which the obscurity of the mystery has withheld from us, it too must be involved in the infamy of some disgrace. Indeed, who is there that would believe that there is anything noble in what those worthless Galli put their hands to, what effeminate debauchees perform? End of the myth of Attis and the Great Mother, from Arnobius of Sicca's The Case Against the Pagans, Book 5. Translated by George E. McCracken, 1949. Read by Dan Attrell. If you would like to support more work such as this, please visit patreon.com/themodernhermeticist. And above all, thank you for listening.